is Diego, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how we made this interior scene in Corona. Well, this interior scene is actually very simple. We are not going to be looking at really small details. We are going to be looking mostly a basic interior illumination. Here you see all the scene is already worked. We are going to delete some of the features we have here, so we can have the scene in its default state. First of all, we're going to look at how this interior scene is illuminated. Well, I'm from Peru, so I'm sorry if my English is kind of rusty. I'm going to do my best so I can explain to you guys in my best English possible how this interior scene works. So, first of all, we are going to be looking at the main light source. For that, we are going to go to environment, and if we look at this, we are going to see that we have a Corona color correct here. The main reason of doing this is because this Corona color correct is actually linked to a Corona sky. So we are going to open our material editor. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to bring this Corona color correct to our material editor. So if we look at this, we are going to see that we have a Corona sky, and this is linked to a Corona color correct. The reason of doing this is because here in this color correction, I have set up the saturation in -1, so we can have a really complete white color on the Corona sky. The Corona sky usually has a little bit of a bluish color, and that's not really bad. I mean, it's actually natural, but in these kind of interiors, I mean Nordic interiors that are mostly cloudy, we need to have a really neutral color in our main source of illumination. So we need to get rid of the bluish color that Corona sky has by default. So this Corona color correct, or we could also use a color correction, is the same. We could use these nodes to get rid of that bluish color. In this case, I used a color correct from Corona, and I put this Corona color correct in our environment map. Okay, so this technique is actually the same as to use a complete white color on the environment map, but using a Corona color correct and a Corona sky is actually more powerful, because we are going to have a little bit more of a good behavior on the bounces of our GI, of our global illumination system. Right? So using a white color on the environment, it's okay, but using a Corona sky is actually more powerful because of the light bounces we are going to have on the interior. So at first, we are going to use a material override. I only have two objects excluded that are actually these two windows. Okay, I need to exclude these two windows because this is where our light is going to get into our interior scene. So I'm going to exclude these two windows from the material override. Okay, so we are going to see now in our render that I have all in white material. And this is good because we are going to learn how the color of our materials affect our shadows. Okay, so I'm going to start our interactive rendering. Well, while this is starting, I'm going to take this time to introduce myself a little bit. I'm from Peru. I'm a 3D artist. I'm an architect also, and I'm making the effort to share these tutorials on English I lived in United States for a year, so I'm kind of I don't know, missing how to speak English really well. So I'm trying to practice my English doing these tutorials, and well, taking also the chance to share the little knowledge that I've gotten about by the years that I've been working on 3D rendering. Okay, well, as we can see now, we have a really dark illumination. Okay, I'm going to put this down to 0, and I'm actually going to reset all of our tone mapping. Okay, and this is what we have right now. Our material override, we are going to look at our material override. It's actually very simple, but I'm going to show you something that is really interesting. But we are going to go into our compact mode so we can have a little more screen space to work. Okay, and I'm going to put our base material here. So if we look at our base material, we are going to see that we have the default gray color that is actually I think is by default in 174. So it's not really white, it's not dark either, it's a good color. However, I want to show you this because this is really important for me when we are talking about shadows and about contrast. It's always to look at our color that is predominating in our scene. So if I put, let's say, a little bit darker color, what we are going to see, okay, let me see, instance, okay, now we have the scene refreshing. I'm going to increase my exposure a little bit, and what we are going to see, okay, I went too far. What we are going to see is that a darker color in most of our scene, I mean we have it now in the material override, but is the predominating material in our scene, and as our predominant material gets darker, the more contrast we are going to have on our shadows in our light places or highlight places. Okay, so what we need to understand here is that we have to know what we are trying to get on our final result, so we can have so we can know what kind of color we are going to use on our base material. In this case, I'm going to use a slightly gray material. We don't want a really white material, because you see, when we have a really dark base material, we are going to have a really strong contrast in shadows and light. But when we have a white material, it's going to be exactly the opposite. We are going to have a really plain image. We are not going to have almost no contrast, and all of our scene is going to look really fake. So if we look at this result now that we have our base material in almost a white color, we are going to see that we have a really plain result. Even if we get down our exposure, we don't have that contrast that we had earlier. Okay, so this is a really good point to focus when we are working with our scene, because we need to understand that the color that we put the most in our scene is going to affect directly the final result. Okay, well, in this case we are going to work with this gray material. Okay, so we don't have a plain result, but neither a really high contrast. We need like to be really in the middle. We don't have to go to the extremes, right? Okay, so if I start the interactive rendering now, we're going to see that we have a result that is really balanced. Okay, okay, I like this. Okay, but the contrast that we have here is actually being really good, but is going to be affected by the highlight compression. So in this case, we don't have really burned areas, but if we push up a little bit our exposure, we're going to see that we are starting to get some burned areas. Okay, so in order to control this, we are going to apply a Reinhardt highlight compression. Okay, and I'm going to push up my exposure a little bit, and I'm going to start controlling these burn areas with our highlight compression. Okay, if I get this value higher, the most we are going to compress the burn areas. Okay, so one mistake that I see making a lot of 3D artists is that they put in the starting point they put 10. Okay, if you see well, this actually controls our burn areas, but one big problem that we have here is that we are almost deleting or getting rid of all the contrast that we had in our image, and that is not good at all. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this highlight compression, I'm going to put it in only one starting point, 1.5, and if you can look at our image right now, we can see that 1.5 is actually getting rid of the burn areas. So I'm just using this highlight compression in the exactly amount I need. Okay, I don't need to put too much highlight compression because I'm going to how would you say this, get rid of our contrast, and we are going to mess our image. Okay, so I'm going to put here stop, and I'm going to lower my exposure. Okay, so now I'm sure now that my highlight compression is going to be controlling the highlight burns of our image, and I also have this nice contrast. Okay, but this contrast is actually by default, and if you can see, it's looking already good, but we need something else to give this image this photographic look. Okay, so what we are going to do here is apply a lookup table. So we're going to apply a LUT, and we are going to use the default Corona LUTs. They are really good. Okay, we always need to look at our final result, and our final result it's meant to be a really neutral illumination. So this, for example, Adam MQ Advantix is giving me this I don't know, yellowish color on all the image, and I don't want this. Okay, so in our last tutorial we used a really cool LUT that is called Keen Ambient Graphic 03. So we are going to use this LUT also, and if you look at this LUT, is giving me a really good contrast, but it's also messing up my light balance. So what I need to do is lower a little bit my simple exposure, and what I'm obtaining now, what I'm having as a result of applying this LUT, is having a really high contrast image, which is really nice, but it also gives me some problems because I'm having here well, a really good light, but here in the right part of the image we don't have a really good light bounces. So we are going to need to pay attention to that part, and what we are going to do is use some help lights to get some more bounces here on this part. Okay, so what we are going to do is what you saw at the start of the tutorial, is that we are going to use the most simple technique that we could use for illuminate an interior, and it's really a powerful technique. Okay, so we are going to put a corona light here as a rectangle, and I'm going to put another rectangle light here. Okay, I don't need these two lights to be instanced because I want to have different values in the intensity for both of them. Okay, so we are going to have one value for this light and one value different for this other light. Okay, so what we are going to see now is that when we start our interactive rendering, we are going to see that we are going to have a really strong light here in the left side, but it's also going to give me more light here in the right place, in the right side of the image. Okay, but now we are getting that plain look that we had in the beginning when we put this white color on our base material. So we don't want this. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to select my light, and I'm going to lower the intensity of this light so I can have a more subtle effect on the light here. Okay, so I'm going to put maybe 20. Okay, and to concentrate more on this light, I'm going to turn off the second light. So we're going to turn it off. Okay, so we can concentrate on this light. Okay, so if you can look at this now, we are having a more lighted scene in this right part of the image, but we are going to do something else so the light doesn't affect this left part of the image and affects more the right part of the image. Okay, we are going to work with its directionality. Okay, the directionality has is going to control the behavior of my light, so it can have more of this projected behavior. Okay, so let's say that we have, for example, our directionality in 1. Okay, I'm going to go to the perspective mode so you can have a closer look to what it is happening here when we use the directionality in the value of 1. So if you can see, we are having the rectangle shape of the light projected into the wall. Okay, so we don't need this, but we need that the light we need the light to don't affect the left part of the image. So the directionality is going to help us to do that. Okay, so we are going to return to our camera. And if you look at this, when we have the directionality of the light in 1, okay, well, we almost don't have no illumination. We have no illumination here on the left side. Okay, but this is messing up our scene. We don't need the value of 1, but we can work maybe with a value of 0.4. Okay, that is going to give me a little bit of directionality, but it's also going to give me a more natural effect on the way of the light. Okay, I'm going to reduce a little bit my exposure, and I'm going to lower also my intensity of the rectangle light. Okay, so here we are going to be having a little bit of a more natural effect. Okay, we are having a more lighting seeing in this right part of our picture. So we are now good to go to turn on the other light. Okay, if we turn on the other light, we are going to see that it's also burning all of the back part of our image. So we are going to put maybe 10. Okay, so if we look at the before and after, before. Okay, so we are mostly seeing more bounces affecting this part of the image if you look at it closely. Okay, so this is going to be fine now that we are having our help lights in our windows. Okay, so this is the most easy way, the most simple way to illuminate or light an interior scene. Okay, there are another ways. We could use an HDRI. Maybe we could use some spotlights in the interior, but for now we are trying to approach to interior illumination in the simplest way possible. Okay, so this is the most basic technique to light an interior scene. And now that we have our illumination, we can work without the material override. So I'm going to turn off the material override, and now I'm going to start our rendering, and now we are going to see all of our interior with materials. Okay, okay, one thing we need to know is that when we work with material override, this is going to happen most of the time. And what is going to happen is that our final result, when we turn on the material, all of the materials, is going to be slightly different depending of what was the predominant color of our scene. Okay, so in this case, our base material that we used in the material override was a little bit darker than all of the materials that we now have on our complete scene. So this is going to make us adjust a little bit our tone mapping. Okay, so I'm going to lower a little bit our exposure. Okay, and yeah, here I see it a little bit more balanced. Okay, and yeah, I don't think we need more contrast. Maybe a little bit, just a little bit, maybe 1.5. And yeah, I think that would be all. Okay, so this is the first tutorial that we are sharing with you guys. I'm sure my English is going to get better in the next tutorials that we are going to be making, but I hope that this tutorial has helped you to learn something new, or to maybe learn another technique to use in your interior scenes in Corona. Making an interior lighting is not really difficult, as you've seen, but we have to focus a lot on our tone mapping, because this is going to define our final result. And also a important thing is focus on the intensity of our lights that we are using as a field lights or help lights. The way we see it, we need to focus on the lights intensity. Okay, so this is all with this tutorial. I really hope that you liked it, and I really hope that you learned something. See you in the next opportunity. Bye.